Hello, everyone. Welcome to my PowerPoint presentation, Business Ethics, a case study on the ethical practice of business. Try to make this quick for everyone. So, ethics in business. Some say there are none. How can there be? After all, with corporate America greedier than ever, everyone's looking out for the bottom line, everyone's looking out for themselves. There are, however, a certain number of guidelines and ethical and social responsibility that companies have to operate in an ethical manner. Now, some play by the rules and some don't. Supporters of corporate social responsibility will say business should pursue environmental and social goals, not merely profits. But how to serve both masters, that is the problem. There are so many companies out there doing great anthropological work, so why are so many operating on an unethical level? The evolution of society in recent decades has been characterized by the increasing individualism of people. And the argument can be made that business is all about the quest for money and power while working with people. And people are not perfect. So people's integrity and moral code can shift depending on the situation, causing them to make unethical decisions in the name of self-preservation. And oftentimes in business, a company's social responsiveness doesn't match up with its inherent social responsibility. On April 20th, 2010, the Deepwater Horizon rig was located 42 miles south of Venice, Louisiana, in the Gulf of Mexico. Its crew was capping a well 5,000 feet underwater, and at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the rig exploded, leaving 11 people dead. With crew now dead and millions of gallons of crude oil spilling into the ocean per day, the world was watching for parent company BP Oil's response. What happened next was a series of mishandled events and attempted cover-ups. In June of 2010, BP Oil sought to sign well-known scientists to research contracts, which would keep them from sharing their findings with the public and ultimately prevent those scientists from testifying against BP Oil in court. So BP also did everything in their power to keep the media away from areas potentially affected by the spill. One contract worker for BP reported that there is a lot of cover-up for BP, and they specifically informed us that they didn't want these pictures of the dead animals. They know that the ocean will wipe most of the evidence away. So BP's initial defensive strategy of admitting responsibility for the problem, yet doing the bare minimum to meet society's expectations, is prevalent here. Ethically, any business has the responsibility of transparency to its stakeholders, transparency to its business dealings, transparency in the face of such a tragedy that cost lives and was now threatening a global ecosystem. But BP chose otherwise. The company had long grown used to operating at the margins of safety. They repeatedly ignored several red flags and equipment issues leading to the horrific accident. I asked Chat GPT to conduct an analysis on my case study in which I asked it to search for problems with management style, management behaviors, and management traits. Chat GPT was able to point out glaring issues in all three categories. Overall, I'll say that AI was able to help me take a step back and see the complete picture with a defined and sectioned breakdown of the events. In the category of management style, AI found many prevalent issues, including a systemic top-down culture of poor risk management, overconfidence in engineering solutions instead of prevention, as well as fragmented decision-making across organizations. As far as management behavior, ChatGPT was able to point out many issues, including failure to act on known safety risks, making decisions without adequate testing, post-disaster attempts to manage information rather than solve issues, and disregard for environmental and health consequences. Yeah, also found many management trait problems, citing lack of empathy and emotional intelligence, defensiveness and avoidance of responsibility, arrogance towards safety expectations, and short term thinking driven by pressure to save time. Management theory application. Ethics is the set of moral principles and values that we all have to live by that define right or wrong. Unfortunately, people are human, as I've said before, moral code can shift depending on the situation, especially when it comes to big business. Self-preservation can take over, putting the project over the safety of the people working on it. And this is what happened with the accident involving the Deepwater Horizon rig. In the face of tragedy, BP showed that their personal principle of virtue was severely lacking. Now, social responsibility is a business's obligation to pursue policies, make decisions, and take actions that benefit society. And when those obligations aren't met, there is a certain expectation of socially responsive actions that a company should take. After the events of this horrific tragedy, BP showed what theirs would be. Ethical responsibility is a company's social responsibility to not violate accepted principles of right and wrong when conducting its business. And while it's easy to say that BP should have just operated ethically from the beginning, I would like to focus on BP's social responsiveness. It is BP's actions after the fact that truly violated all ethical standards. Now, overall, BP's response was largely defensive. While they did admit fault, barely, the company did the least required to meet all social expectations. They did all they could do to steer the narrative in the media, hiding as much of the truth as possible, while patting themselves on their backs for their own cleanup efforts. And spill workers were instructed not to talk to the media. BP then launched its own media campaign touting the success of their cleanup efforts, which only contributed to the perception that BP's beach cleanup effort was primarily about improving their own public image. They admitted to posting on its website a photo that exaggerated the activity at its Gulf oil spill command center, and their own CEO made many tone-deaf statements about the situation, in which his attitude that BP should be applauded for its quick engineering during a crisis demonstrated a lack of understanding that BP was being blamed for this whole thing to begin with. Instead of this blatantly defensive strategy, BP should have adopted an accommodative strategy to the Deepwater Horizon rig disaster. In this strategy, a company will accept responsibility for a problem and take a progressive approach by doing all that could be expected to solve the problem. In this instance, BP should have come out and said, here's where we failed, and here's what we're going to do to ensure that this never happens again. There are many proactive solutions to what should have been PEP's accommodative approach. I would suggest that BP drastically raise the frequency of safety checks in all departments, perhaps hiring an outside ethics firm, or maybe one could even be created for business ethics, which works independently from the company to provide another layer of checks and balances. BP could have even spearheaded the research to help create the next generation of equipment, making things safer for the entire industry. This is where the money from their media campaign should have gone. They could have even formed a strategic partnership with the World Wildlife Fund, seeking more eco-friendly avenues. So I'll raise the question, can ethics be taught? Many believe that an individual's ethical development is pretty much complete by college age. But for years, people have charged that the public school system should add some sort of finance or money managing course to the curriculum. And I'll take things a step further. I would add the ethical practice of business into said finance course. Schools could highlight all aspects of business decisions so that students could see the domino effect of unethical decision making. All companies, not just BP, could benefit from holding regular ethics workshops for their employees. Unfortunately, everything comes from the top down, and if the person in charge isn't an unethical leader, the company is most likely doomed from the start. For academic research to help support my theory that an accommodative strategy would have been best for BP, I present the Domino's Pizza YouTube scandal of 2009. Boogergate, as it was called, was a public relations scandal for Domino's in 2009, in which two supposed employees made YouTube videos in which they stuck cheese and other food up their nose and put it into food items that were going to be sold to customers. The acts were committed inside of Domino's store while the employees were in uniform. So the public did criticize Domino's for its response time of 48 hours, but they did come out and release their own YouTube apology. They assured consumers that the store where their videos were shot had been shut down and sanitized. The president of a PR firm further cemented the success of Domino's accommodative strategy, in which they did all they could be expected to do, saying that they shut down the store, they apologized, they went to their demographic, they went to YouTube. I think all that's great. And in the end, Domino's crisis response was heralded as a landmark event in crisis management. So Domino's response supports my idea of an alternative accommodative strategy for BP. While their crisis was not as serious as BP's, this was a potential public relations nightmare for the company. Once a restaurant or a food chain gets a bad reputation like that, it can be extremely difficult to come back from. They could have easily tried to play the videos off as a hoax, but the pizza giant came out right away, apologized, and shut down the store for sanitation. As my second supportive research, I present the Gucci blackface sweater scandal of 2019. So, as silly as this sounds, in 2019, fashion juggernaut Gucci was in hot water over a certain style of sweater that critics said evoked blackface. Controversy ensued because a global brand such as Gucci is expected to steer away from such tone-deaf actions as invoking blackface. When first asked about the situation, Bizzari was unaware of the issue, apologizing because of this mistake, because of this ignorance, adding that it was not at all intentional. We are coming from a different culture. We're Italian. We don't know all the cultural differences. Berzari would go on to say that this incident was a wake-up call for Gucci to accelerate its diversity and inclusiveness, including a full program of scholarships in major cities such as New York, Nairobi, Tokyo, Beijing, and Seoul, which will facilitate an increase of different communities within the creative office. Now, instead of firing anyone from his team in the name of diversity, Bizzari had stated that he would instead want to foster meetings and committees where he makes sure people of all different ages, different cultures are part of the discussion. To him, that was the best way because otherwise he'd be discriminating against his own team. So I will say that Gucci's response also supports my idea of an alternate accommodative strategy for BP. Gucci apologized as soon as it was aware that they had offended people, and the sweater was discontinued at a loss to Gucci. Citing cultural differences between Italy and America would suggest that the team at Gucci weren't aware of the proximity of effect that this particular fashion choice would have made in a different country or market. And for my final synthesis and conclusion, I'd just like to say that through all of our studies here, I've really grown to love this accommodative strategy. I know not every strategy will work in every situation, but with the accommodative strategy, it's all about ownership. I feel it's part of the healing process and the growth for all parties involved because if you do something wrong, you should own up to it. You should take ownership of it and you should do everything to fix it. You should do everything in your power to make it, in a business stance, make it right for all of your stakeholders. Now, BP could learn a lot from my supportive research in how to structurally form a better response overall. I think that accommodative strategy would have been much better for BP in the long run. So that's it, folks. I hope you liked it. Good luck, everyone. Thank you very much.